a stroke, and he fell to the floor, and he managed to get help and get to the hospital. But he is paralyzed on one side of his body in a wheelchair, and at the mercy of everybody to take care of his every need. And Ellen and I have a good friend from Florida who was very involved with our center down there, who moved to Hawaii and now lives in a little community, very small, like 8 to 10 people maybe, with Ram Dass, and they all sort of take care of him, and it's really beautiful. But Ram Dass, he talks about that he went through the experience of what the heck is this about, and depression and sadness and grief, and my whole life is based on speaking, and now I'm in this body, I can't even speak. So he had to learn how to talk again. He had to learn how to be again, really. But he really talks about, through this experience, that so much of what he was seeking, he was a Harvard-trained psychologist. He was a professor there, and I'm not sure if I mentioned it, after the LSD, they said, I don't think we need you on staff anymore. But so they didn't, because he was very public about that. But anyway, everything in his life, even his spiritual practice to a degree, had been very much in the intellect and the thinking mind and trying to figure it out and make sense. And of course, he began to do his spiritual quest and search, and that led him more towards the heart. But now he's got this experience to where he literally was forced, whether he liked it or not. And I've heard that he would be in a lecture, and this actually, Ellen and I think we saw him shortly after this all happened. This was one of his first ones, and he was very deliberate, had a really hard time speaking. And he had a huge smile on his face. He was just so peaceful and just smiling and looking around. But you would see that he would be on a thought, and then all of a sudden, it would be gone. And what I read here is that really trained him, that he had to drop into his heart, and that he had to start speaking from his heart more. And so that's really the whole message that he talks about in this new book of his, which I'll get to in just a moment. But he also, before this stroke, he wrote a book, Be Here Now, okay? Be Here Now. And he says that that's been his mantra through this life, and that's really what he's here to learn, is to be present, be here in this moment fully. And so he continues to uphold the bodhisattva ideal for others through his compassionate sharing of true knowledge and vision. His unique skill in getting people to cut through and feel divine love without dogma is still a positive influence on many people from all over the world. And we're so programmed by dogma and doctrine and belief systems, and that's all in the intellect. And we're never going to find God there. So it's really about if we can get down to our heart space. And often I'll just close my eyes, just like I'm doing now, and just place my hands over, just to get my awareness there, my intention. And then that's where my truth comes forth. And we all have that ability and potential, but we have to, make a commitment to doing so, saying that I don't choose to be led by my intellect, but rather by my heart. Now, a few things that I'd like to share is, number one, the book is his most recent book is called Polishing the Mirror: How to Live from Your Spiritual Heart. And I love what, when I think of polishing the mirror, I also think of, that takes me right back to where it takes me right back to where the Ho'oponopono comes from. And when they talk about the Ho'oponopono, which is really a forgiveness practice, and it says that really through forgiveness, what we're doing is polishing our mind. We're polishing up all those false beliefs that keep us in judgment and separation. And we're choosing to see the divinity and the perfection rather than all these preconceived ideas. And literally, I believe that Jesus and other masters lived in that state of being to where their minds were so healed, so polished, They were so heart-focused, heart-centered, that they literally didn't see anything but the divine, and thus created a space for that to come forth. You know, how often is it that we hear about a person who may be ill, or we see a person struggling, and with good intentions, I'm not saying it's ill will at all, but good intentions, oh, so-and-so had a bad report. And then we take in that energy, and then we're just sort of projecting that, just like Ram Dass said when he was in the hospital, oh, you poor guy, oh, you've got a stroke, that's like really terrible. And so we think we're supporting, and our intentions are good, as I said, but what we're doing is feeding the illusion rather than the truth. And so we have to shift that focus. And I think we have to start within ourselves, stop judging ourselves, beating ourselves up, defending, attacking. It's really a self-healing job. And as we do that and clean our own mirror, polish ourselves up, then what happens, we see the world differently, and we're able to share that gift of pure healing and heart energy with everyone and everything we see. Well, as I said earlier, he did ask that question, what would it be like to be in a body that would be sick? Well, he had somehow triggered that intention in his mind. So we have to think about, what would it be? What would it be like to be in a perfectly healthy body that's vibrant, and what would it be like to be surrounded with great friends and a beautiful community? What would it be like to be in our new Namaste Center home? All of these dreams and visions, we have to make sure that, as Kathleen said, I often talk about we got to focus on what we want, not what we don't want, not only for ourselves, but for each other. And Ram Dass talks about, and I talked about this a few weeks ago, about suffering. And why is there suffering? And after the Buddha's enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, he expounded to his new disciples his teachings, which came to be known as the Four Noble Truths. The first Noble Truth says that all existence is characterized by suffering. Birth has it in it, suffering, death has suffering, old age has suffering, and sickness has in it suffering. Not getting what you want has in it suffering. Getting what you don't want has its suffering. Even getting what you do want, or even getting what you do want or not getting what you don't want, it involves suffering, because both are in time. And the point is anything in time is impermanent. Jesus said, lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt. As long as you are caught up in time, you're caught up in suffering. And I think that's such a good point, and I think that, our mind, we had a beautiful gathering last night where we were talking about, co-creating a new paradigm and a way of being. And, there's so much emphasis. There were some beautiful children here, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, these are the little indigos, these are the kids that are going to change the world. And, they're not interested or even aligned, and largely due to the parents' wonderful guidance, I'll say. But they're not thinking about necessarily, I'm going to get a college degree and I'm going to do this so I can have a big house and I can da-da-da-da-da. They're really, following their hearts and the way they live. And they're realizing that the stuff that we've been programmed to believe is really the American dream, or whatever we call it, is not really sustaining us individually or collectively. I love these young minds and that are thinking about really what can we do, or what's best for the we, not necessarily for me. That one mind and one heart. Well, the second and third noble truths deal with the causes of suffering, which are clinging to the mind, as we've talked about, to attractions and aversions, and to a false sense of self. The Course in Miracles says we have an identity problem. We identify ourselves with the illusion, who we are. We think we're, where we came from, our job, how much money we have, who our friends are, et cetera, et cetera. So we identify with that. So it's false identification rather than true self-identification is that we're all divine beings. And when we do that, shift from out here to in here, we enable that to manifest and come forward. So what he says is, the fourth noble truth lays out the enlightened eightfold path to be free of suffering. And Ram Dass says, I deeply honor the Buddha, and I've studied Buddhism and practiced much Buddhist meditation. But my particular spiritual path is through my guru, Maharishi Ji, and the guru that reflects our deepest self. When the guru is fully known, then we recognize ourself. You know, did anyone watch that crazy guy on CNN last night, by the way? Holy hell or something?
Yeah.
That was insane. But, you know, that was, wow. If you watch, you know, you can see how, and I believe that, I don't mean to digress, but when you see that these cult figures, you know, we are the farthest thing from a cult, because I tell you, don't believe anything I say. It's like you got to find your own way. You know, that's what I'm leading us to, is to find our own path, our own truth. And that's why we offer so many different ways to express that, because what may work for one doesn't work for another. And as long as it's coming from love and the purpose and goal of unifying, then I'm all for it. And so that's why we're surrounded by so many wonderful masters in this group. So we have to remember that, that we are divine, that we are total love. Each and every one of us are. And that we can support and honor each other in that process. Well, I want to talk just a little bit about the last thing, which I think is one of the most important things, and that is faith. And I love, everything to me lately has come down to just faith. And he says in his book, the whole game is based on faith. Faith comes through grace. In the Bible, the Apostle Paul says, for it is by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not from yourselves, this is a gift of God. It's not by your works, so no one can boast. When the faith is strong enough, it is sufficient to just be. Without faith, the existential fears and uncertainties that we have will dominate. If you have faith, you have no fear. If you don't have faith, you have fear. As I questioned my own faith after the stroke, I began to ask, what is faith? I found that my faith is in the One. My faith in Maharishi as a person, but faith is in him as a doorway to the One. Faith in oneness state of being. Again, this is a state where God, Guru, and Self are one. That's the Trinity, that we all are one. Faith is not a belief. Beliefs are in the head. Faith is in the heart. Faith comes from within you, and you cultivate it by opening your spiritual heart and quieting your mind until you feel your identity with your deeper and true self. So I think that, it's all about faith. And that I think the world is expressing to us, it's not out there, we're getting it, systems are collapsing, we think that this is gonna save us, support us, sustain us, and it's just not working anymore. That's not a bad thing. If we have faith, go into our heart, we're collectively creating a world where love is the bottom line in all we do. What would love do in this situation? What serves the greater good of all? Not what can I get out of this? That's the old paradigm. That's a weak paradigm. A couple of quotes that I want to share as I wind down here is number one, this is a quote of Ram Dass's. He says, true compassion arises out of the plane of consciousness where I am you and where you and I are one. And this is a Buddhist loving kindness blessing. So it's not actually from Ram Dass, but it's from his book. So it comes from the consciousness that you and I are one. It comes from our Namaste. The spirit, the divinity in me, the spirit of love in me beholds the spirit of love in you. And when we truly take that in, it's so powerful. It's not just, they use Namaste now in TV commercials, Namaste. And, but it's, I also like what he says here. Our real problem is we're too busy holding on to our unworthiness. And, we're focusing on that which is not real. Make that move from here to here. Focus on your divinity, your truth. And then there are no problems. Our faith strengthens. Our light shines brighter. Life is great. As we grow in our consciousness, there will be more compassion and more love, and barriers between people, between religions, between nations will begin to fall. And yes, we will have won over separateness. So, it's what are we here to do? The Course in Miracles says all we have to do is accept the atonement for ourselves. It's a course in self-healing, self-responsibility, and I think that's where it's all coming back to. As my mind is healed, as my consciousness is lifted, everybody is lifted with me. No one's exempt, because we're just like this big quantum soup, as I call it. And every time I throw love into the soup, it gets bigger. And every time I throw fear into the soup, it gets a little weaker. So the more love we can send into that recipe here, that soup, just going to keep growing and growing and growing. So we do have an integral role in the awakening. So when your faith is strong enough, it's sufficient to just be. It's a journey towards simplicity, which is what I hear all the time, simplicity. It's a journey towards quietness, towards a kind of joy that's not of this world. It's a journey that has taken us from primarily identifying with our body and our psyche to identifying with God, and ultimately beyond identification. So that's the new paradigm. That's the awakening. So many people are getting it, and I'm so excited. It's just so cool to see people really pay attention, take responsibility, recognize when they're pointing the finger that way, there truly are three pointing back at themselves. Seeing that, I love what the Course in Miracles says, a teacher of God is generous out of self-interest. So, you can't even really give yourself a pat on the back because I'm nice, but I'm generous and I'm forgiving. But really, it's all about self-interest, because if I'm judging you, that is an unhealed place in my mirror. My mirror is not spotless then. So it's responsibility for sight and vision. And this little prayer that I will close with and follow up just with one line from Byron Katie. May all beings be free from danger. May all beings be free from mental suffering. May all beings be free from physical suffering. May all beings know peace. Oh. And Byron Katie says, when we love what is, it becomes so simple to live in the world. And yes, it does. Namaste and thank you. There was a lot more. That would be worth a study group, I think. Another group, we'll just move in. So if you'll take your offering and hold it to your heart and give thanks for our center and all those who join together in supporting and encouraging each other so that we may be of greater service to the world. We offer these gifts for the highest and holiest of purposes and ask that Spirit use these so that our center may continue to grow, heal, and prosper in all ways. May everyone who enters here be blessed and loved. So it is. Amen.
Wow. This is a song that I wrote this week.
Really?
Nobody's heard it yet, including me. Including Tommy, he's never heard it. But it was just so appropriate for this topic that we were just listening to, and I feel. And so anything could happen. But this is as a result of, Julie introduced me to the works of Neville, and I think that's kind of appropriate along the lines here. And it's all about the feeling of the wish fulfilled with Neville, and I think it talk about faith, I think it's really that feeling of knowing that it's already here. And so this is the song. I haven't really figured out how to end it yet, so we'll just have to figure that out. So anyway, this is it. I think with a small group you won't mind. Namaste. It's called The Feeling of the Wish Fulfilled.
That was great. Yeah. I bet that didn't come from here. I think it came from here. Good, good. Anyone going to the Apple Festival?
This afternoon.
Okay. Well, let's join hands and we'll lesson close.
I'll go home.